The moment I realized I was the villainous first husband in a novel, my wife the female lead, and I had already been married for 2 years. According to the book's plot, I had 6 months left before I was supposed to step aside and make way for her true love. And these next 6 months were destined to be the period where I'd dig my own grave while simultaneously pushing the main couple closer together. I woke up this morning and, as usual, prepared my dear wife Chloe's favorite breakfast, a custom sandwich and hand-ground coffee. I handed her her purse, her keys, and saw her off at the door. Standing there, watching her car's taillights disappear down the street, a sudden jolt went through my mind. Everything I had once forgotten came rushing back all at once. It was a moment of pure, shocking epiphany, like I had achieved a state of sudden enlightenment. Here's how it happened. 25 years ago, I was born into the world of this book, carrying the memories of my past life. At first, I didn't know I had been transported into a novel, not until a man, grinning so wide his eyes were crescents, said, "Son, we finally have a name for you. We'll call you Ethan Anderson. Anderson from my name, and Ethan, well, your mother and I just liked it. What do you think?" The man in front of me was Mr. Anderson, my father. As for my mother, she was obviously the other half of that naming equation. I figured if my middle name wasn't already set, he would have found a way to incorporate her name too. How should I put it? He was a bit cheesy. Although the name Ethan Anderson sounded vaguely familiar, I didn't give it much thought. After all, with such a common name, the chances of it being a coincidence were high. That is, until 3 years later, when our next-door neighbor, Mr. Hayes, had a baby girl, a perfect little porcelain doll who was absolutely adorable. My dad immediately piped up, "Look at little Chloe. She and our Ethan would be a perfect match. What do you say, Hayes? How about we promise them to each other?" I didn't hear how Mr. Hayes responded. My mind was completely filled with the name Little Chloe, Chloe Hayes. In that instant, I finally understood where the familiarity of the name Ethan Anderson came from. Weren't these the characters from a book I had just finished reading before I was reborn? It was a strong female lead romance novel. And as is standard for that genre, you have the powerful woman and the sweet, doting man. In that book, the powerful woman was Chloe Hayes, a cold, unsmiling, domineering CEO. As for the sweet, doting man, that was Leo Vance, a cheerful, sunny intern with a bright future. As a newcomer to the corporate world, he faced countless setbacks and blows, but even so, he remained full of passion and hope for life. It was this persistence and resilience that made the big boss, the CEO, see him in a different light. Not only did she not blame him for his mistakes, but she also offered him a great deal of help. And so, gradually, the CEO's initial curiosity about the intern transformed into a deep affection. Thus began their romantic love story. But for a beautiful love story to become strong and enduring, it needs a few clueless obstacles to add to the drama. Ethan Anderson was that clueless obstacle. Ethan Anderson and Chloe Hayes grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Their families had an understanding since they were kids, and they got married as soon as they were of legal age. Ethan loved Chloe deeply, but for Chloe, her feelings for Ethan were more familial than romantic. Or perhaps, before Leo Vance came along, Chloe simply didn't know what love was. Her career and her love life seemed to have been arranged for her. All she had to do was follow the path laid out. But Leo's appearance was like a ray of sunshine, breaking through the stagnant silence of her life and igniting a passion Chloe had never felt before. However, their relationship was platonic. Although the air between them crackled with romantic tension, they never crossed any moral boundaries. To move the plot forward, it was time for Ethan Anderson to make his entrance. As the husband, he quickly noticed his wife's unusual behavior. Unraveling the clues one by one, he found his way to Leo Vance. Then came all sorts of suppression and bullying directed at Leo. Not only did his actions fail to harm Leo in any way, but they also made Chloe realize her true feelings for him. At this point, all I can think is, are you insane? After one disastrous act after another, Chloe grew to despise Ethan more and more, eventually asking for a divorce. Of course, Ethan wouldn't agree. He went so far as to hire people to kidnap Leo, intending to ruin him completely. This move completely crossed Chloe's line. She used her power to crush the Anderson family's business and then turned the tables on Ethan, leaving him broken. And just like that, Ethan Anderson died a quiet, insignificant death. Meanwhile, Chloe and Leo lived happily ever after, later having a pair of twins. A happy ending, my ass. When I realized I was in a book, I had only one guiding principle: cherish my life and stay far away from Chloe Hayes. And that's exactly what I did. Before she turned 3, I made a great show of keeping my distance from her. I would cry whenever I saw her, determined to make us the most familiar of strangers. But fate just had to mess with me. My efforts were actually working. Even our parents started to think we were just not meant to be. But fate insisted on playing a cruel joke. When Chloe was 3 and I was 6, I took a bad fall. After that, everything I knew about being in a book was wiped from my memory. All I could see, all I could think about, was Chloe's irresistibly cute face. For the next 22 years, I became Chloe's most devoted follower. I protected her, doted on her, and never let any harm come to her. And she silently accepted it all, never once refusing my affection. This only fueled my devotion. And so, inevitably, we walked down the aisle and into the institution of marriage. My tomb. Standing outside our villa, I pinched my thigh so hard that tears streamed down my face. Damn it, her beauty was my downfall. Walking back into the house, the exquisite sandwich and steaming hand-ground coffee were still sitting on the dining table. Thinking back, it was 4 days ago that Chloe had suddenly stopped eating the breakfast I made for her. Her reason was, "It's too early. I'm not hungry." I didn't think much of it and continued to wake up early to make it for her every day. I always thought, what if she's hungry today? What if she's hungry and there's nothing for her to eat? But now, with my memories restored, I finally understood the real reason. It wasn't that she wasn't hungry. It was that she was saving her appetite for the office, to eat the breakfast Leo Vance brought for her. Leo said that drinking coffee in the morning was bad for you. Leo said that sandwiches lacked a personal, home-cooked touch. Leo said, "I love having oatmeal and a bagel in the morning, with some fresh squeezed orange juice. Ms. Hayes, you should try some." I took a deep breath, a sharp pain stabbing at my heart. What was I supposed to do now? Sitting at the table, eating the sandwich I had made, it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Damn you, fate, you play dirty. If I had remembered I was in a book this whole time, I never would have gotten close to Chloe. Knowing she was destined to fall for someone else and still getting involved with her, wasn't that just asking for pain? If I had just transmigrated at this very moment, I would have demanded a divorce immediately, cutting ties with Chloe and all this nonsense. But it had been 22 years. I had worshipped her for 22 years. I truly loved her, and Chloe was special to me. I always believed that she loved me too, even if not as deeply as I loved her. I thought I was still the one and only for her. That was the reason I could chase after her for so many years. And now you're telling me she doesn't love me, that she has a true love waiting in the wings? What's the point of this? To destroy me? Just then, our housekeeper, Maria, came in. Seeing me, she asked, "Sir, what would you like for lunch today? I'm heading out to get groceries." Suddenly, a thought struck me, and I shot up from my seat. "Maria, please make some of Mrs. Hayes's favorite dishes." "I'm going to her office for lunch," I said. "Of course, sir. I'll get right on it. I'm heading out for a bit." I got in my car, left the villa, and drove straight to the hospital. Chloe's period was a week late this month, which I hadn't thought much of initially. After all, her cycle had always been irregular. But with my memories back, I recalled something crucial. In the original novel, Chloe had been pregnant once. But Ethan Anderson never knew. There was a scene where Ethan went to Chloe's office and, upon pushing the door open, saw her adjusting Leo's tie. In reality, it was innocent. It was Leo's first time wearing a suit, and he didn't know how to tie it, and Chloe, who often tied mine, was an expert and just gave him a hand. But Ethan didn't know that. He lunged forward like a madman, raising his hand to strike Leo. Chloe shielded Leo and was shoved aside by Ethan. That one push caused her to miscarry. Ethan was devastated, consumed with guilt for hurting Chloe, and nearly took his own life. What he didn't know was that Chloe had never intended to keep the baby in the first place. I drove steadily toward Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Chloe and I had been married for 2 years, but we had always used protection. We had a silent agreement not to push the issue of having children. I didn't know what Chloe was thinking. For my part, I just wanted a few more years of it being just the two of us. Soon, I arrived at the hospital. Numbly, I went straight to the obstetrics and gynecology department. And there, without a doubt, I saw Chloe. I watched her register, see the doctor, pay the fees, get the tests done, and wait for the results. The whole process took 2 hours. For those 2 hours, my mind was a complete blank. I couldn't think about anything. I watched as Chloe walked out of the examination room, a lab report in her hand. She stood there in silence for a long time before finally tearing the paper into pieces and throwing it in the trash. Then she left. The cigarette between my fingers fell to the ground. It wasn't until I reached the hospital entrance that I snapped out of my daze. Watching the people come and go, I took a deep breath and drove back. 22 years of feelings, 2 years of marriage, and a child on the way. I refused to let a novel's plot dictate a death sentence for my life. "Chloe, don't let me down." When I got home, Maria had already prepared the food. As she packed it into containers, she smiled and said, "It's rare to see a couple as loving as you and Mrs. Hayes these days. It makes me so envious just watching you." In the past, I would have beamed with happiness at her words, but right now, I couldn't even manage to force a smile. The villa was a half-hour drive from Chloe's company, Hayes Corporation. By the time I arrived downstairs, It was exactly noon. The receptionist knew me, so without needing to be announced, I went straight to the private elevator and rode it unimpeded to the 32nd floor. The first person to see me was Kurt, Chloe's assistant. The moment he saw me, a flicker of panic crossed his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Mr. Anderson, what brings you here?" he asked. I gave a slight chuckle. "Where's Chloe?" Kurt replied, "The CEO is in her office. I'll go let her know you're here." I grabbed his arm. "No need, I'll go myself." I hadn't been to Chloe's company many times, but I still knew my way around. Reaching the CEO's office, I gently pushed the door open. The office had excellent lighting. At noon, brilliant sunlight streamed through the clean, clear glass, filling the room with light and warmth. Against the light, I saw a man and a woman sitting at the desk. In front of them were cute, cat-themed lunch boxes. They were sitting very close, happily eating the food inside. The young man seemed to be saying something, a smile on his face. The woman looked up, listening intently. I don't know if it was the sunlight, but in that moment, she looked exceptionally gentle, a kind of gentleness I had never seen from her before. Fearing my eyes were deceiving me, I took out my phone and aimed it at the scene, pressing the shutter button. Click. I let out a soft tisk. Damn it, I forgot to turn off the shutter sound. I had just ruined a beautiful moment. How terrible of me. Both of them seemed extremely surprised by my appearance, their expressions frozen for a few seconds. Seeing that look on Chloe's face actually pleased me. I couldn't help it. I let out a laugh. Chloe frowned at me, her expression clearly showing her displeasure at my arrival. "Ah, Chloe, you really know how to hurt a guy." Leo's face went pale, and he scrambled to his feet. He moved so quickly that he knocked over a container of soup, spilling it all over his leg and making him cry out in pain. Chloe shot up from her seat and pulled him back. I turned and walked away, not wanting to see what happened next. We were all civilized people, after all. I had no desire to act out the undignified scenes from the novel. Kurt was standing behind me, looking nervous. I shoved the lunch container I was holding into his arms. "Here, you can have it." Kurt looked utterly terrified. I didn't leave. Instead, I went to the secretarial department. When I walked in, several secretaries stood up. It seemed they all recognized me. That was good. It saved me the trouble of explaining myself. "Which one of you is Felix?" I asked. A man, impeccably dressed down to the last strand of hair, stood up nervously. "Sir, is there something I can help you with?" I took my business card out of my wallet and handed it to him. "I'm very interested in what you have. Make sure you contact me." Felix looked completely stunned. By the time I walked out of the secretarial department, Chloe was already standing outside. I wiped all emotion from my face and walked past her without a word. But she had no intention of letting me go, grabbing my hand tightly. She asked, "Why did you come here?" I said, "Let go." Perhaps my tone was too cold. After all, I had never spoken to her like that before. Chloe's grip on my hand tightened. "Ethan, don't make a scene." I sighed. "Chloe, I don't want to talk to you right now." Chloe's face darkened, her eyes blazing with anger as she stared at me. I met her gaze, refusing to back down. I, Ethan Anderson, have never been a patient man. The only reason I was ever gentle and accommodating with her was because I loved her. Now I realized there was no need for that anymore. I pried her fingers off my arm and left the company without a backward glance. After leaving the office, I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a hotel. Felix didn't disappoint me. Just an hour and a half later, he contacted me. In the original novel, Felix was a minor antagonist. He was extremely confident in his own looks, a confidence that made him a bit arrogant. So when Leo Vance caught Chloe's eye, Felix was incredibly jealous. You could say he was the first person to notice something was going on between Leo and Chloe. Driven by a complex mix of emotions, he had secretly photographed all the ambiguous moments between Leo and Chloe when they were alone. These photos later ended up in Ethan Anderson's hands, becoming the catalyst for his descent into villainy. I wasn't interested in becoming a villain, but I was very interested in the dirt he had. I paid him a handsome sum for all the scandalous material he had collected. I have to say, he delivered. There weren't just photos, but videos too. I stared at the evidence for nearly 2 hours, until my eyes were sore and my stomach was growling. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. Even though I had no appetite, I couldn't just starve myself. Just as I hung up with room service, my phone rang. It was Chloe. 7:27 p.m., her usual time for getting home from work. I didn't answer, I just declined the call. She didn't call back. That was the Chloe I knew. After hanging up on her, I dialed my lawyer, Mr. Hoffman. "Mr. Anderson, how can I help you? I need you to draft a divorce agreement for me. I need it by tomorrow." The other end went silent, clearly shocked. He didn't say anything for a long moment. I thought there was a problem with the call. "Mr. Hoffman?" He finally snapped out of it. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "Whose divorce agreement?" I found it amusing. Was he expecting me to ask him to draft one for someone else? Mine, for me and Chloe Hayes. This time, Mr. Hoffman responded quickly. Right, I understand. How would you like to divide the assets? I said, what's mine is mine and what's hers is hers. I don't want any of our shared assets. Although Chloe and I had our own separate businesses, our joint assets were substantial. All the investments and collections we'd acquired over the years, dividing them up would be a lengthy process. Mr. Hoffman asked, so you're leaving with nothing? I didn't like the sound of that. In that case, have her give up her share of the joint assets. They all come to me. I'm sure Chloe Hayes is generous enough for that. Understood. I'll draft it immediately and send it over to you. Mr. Hoffman was incredibly efficient. He had it done in half an hour and emailed it directly to me. I was amazed. At that speed, I hadn't even finished my dinner yet. I decided then and there that Mr. Hoffman was getting a huge bonus at the end of the year. After eating, I prepared to go downstairs to print the divorce agreement and get the photos developed. As soon as I opened the door, a figure appeared suddenly, startling me. Looking closer, I saw it was Chloe. Her brows were tightly furrowed, her face dark. I wasn't surprised to see her. She was a person who lived by rules. As long as I was still her husband, she wouldn't just let me be. Since I wasn't answering her calls, it was only natural that she would come find me. Why didn't you come home? She asked in a low voice. I replied, perfect timing. Come in and sit down for a minute. I have something to say to you. With that, I started to head out. Where are you going? To print something. I'll go with you. I pushed her aside gently but firmly, looking at her with an expression that allowed no argument. No, wait here. Inside the elevator, I let out a long breath and clenched my trembling hands, cursing myself for being so pathetic. When I returned with the printed documents, Chloe was sitting primly on the sofa. She was always so composed, like an emotionless robot. But this afternoon, looking at those photos, I learned that wasn't the truth. The divorce agreement was in my hand, but I didn't present it yet. Instead, I asked her, a friend of mine said they saw you at the hospital today. Are you feeling unwell? I was still holding onto a sliver of hope. Hope that Chloe would tell me she was pregnant, but she just glanced up briefly before looking down again. She said, they must have seen someone else. I wasn't at the hospital. The heart that had been suspended in midair finally plummeted into the abyss. Fine. The divorce agreement was in duplicate. I took a pen from my bag, signed my name, and handed it to Chloe. She took it, confused, and looked down at the document. Her expression jolted, and she looked up at me in disbelief. A divorce? You want to divorce me? I nodded. Yes. Chloe stared at me, her gaze heavy. I met her gaze calmly. After a long moment, she slammed the papers down on the table. The reason? I took out the developed photos and tossed them in front of her. The one on top showed her and Leo's backs as they stood on the rooftop, looking out at the view. The angle was perfect, capturing the moment they turned to look at each other and smiled. Chloe flipped through the photos one by one. Her expression was calm, completely unruffled. Even the hand holding the pictures didn't tremble. I let out a derisive snort. Compared to my own reaction, the difference was stark. You're having me followed? After looking through all the photos, Chloe looked up, her eyes filled with impatience and suppressed anger. Her reaction made me laugh out of sheer anger. So after seeing all this, your only thought is to assign blame? That's just like you. You've successfully shown me your talent for deflecting. But let me clarify, I didn't have you followed. Someone just happened to capture these moments, and I simply paid for them. Is there a problem? Do you want to sue me for infringing on your privacy? I'm ready when you are. Chloe's brow furrowed tightly. That's not what I meant. He and I just have a normal professional relationship. There's nothing going on between us. If this is because of him, it's completely unnecessary. I sneered. Of course, I know. You haven't done anything, you haven't even held hands. But so what? Am I Ethan Anderson so pathetic that I have to wait until I see something even more humiliating, until I'm publicly shamed, before I can react? I'm sorry, but my line is drawn far before that. Chloe's gaze turned icy. She stood up and advanced on me. Ethan, what is this nonsense? I've already told you there's nothing between me and him. What more do you want? I frowned and took a few steps back. Can't you understand plain English? I said I want a divorce. I can't live with someone who could cheat on me at any moment. Chloe looked agitated. She growled, Ethan, stop this foolishness. Pack your things and come home with me. I can pretend none of this ever happened. That set me off. Nothing happened? On what grounds can you say nothing happened? You're the one who did these things, and you have the nerve to be indignant with me. Divorce. Now, immediately. Shut up. Chloe raised her voice. Ethan, I don't want to hear that word again. You're not a child anymore. You need to be responsible for the things you say. That sentence successfully enraged me. responsible. How dare she say that word to me? I rushed over and grabbed one of the photos. In it, Chloe was eating a pastry Leo had bought for her, holding a cup of soy milk in her hand. The date on the photo was from the day before yesterday. I wake up an hour early every single morning to grind your coffee and make your sandwiches. I never sleep in. I treat you like a queen, and then someone tosses you a cheap bone and you act like it's the most delicious thing in the world? Do you have any sense of gratitude? My chest heaved with anger. You want to talk to me about responsibility? Do you even have the right? This was probably the first time Chloe had ever been yelled at like this. The look in her eyes made it seem like she wanted to devour me, but I didn't care. I actually felt a sense of release. Chloe gave me a long, deep look. Are you sure you want a divorce? I held the divorce agreement and a pen out to her, my actions demonstrating my resolve. Chloe's expression shifted several times before she finally signed her name on the document. She signed with such force that she nearly tore through the paper. She didn't even glance at the contents. I raised an eyebrow, suddenly feeling like I'd gotten the short end of the stick. If I had known it would be this easy, I would have taken her for a lot more. After all, whoever complains about having too much money? With a dark face and an aura of fury, Chloe stood up to leave. Watching her back, I called out a reminder. Bring your ID and our marriage certificate. I'll wait for you at the city clerk's office tomorrow morning. Her steps faltered for a second, but then she left without looking back. The next day, I woke up at the crack of dawn. A glance at the clock filled me with rage. It was the biological clock I had developed over years of waking up early for her. I didn't need an alarm. This instinct was just another reminder that years of my devotion had been thrown to the dogs. Chloe, you're really something else. Suppressing my anger, I buried my head in the pillow and tried to go back to sleep. But no matter what I did, I couldn't fall back asleep. It was infuriating. I tossed and turned for over an hour before finally, reluctantly, getting out of bed. After a quick breakfast, I gathered my things and headed to the city clerk's office. I waited there for Chloe, and that wait stretched into 2 hours. By the time my patience ran out, she still hadn't shown up. My mood soured completely. Chloe, you've really outdone yourself. I got in my car and drove straight to her company. When Kurt saw me, he looked like he was facing a major crisis, tense and trembling. He said, "Sir, the CEO is in a meeting. Would you like to wait in her office?" I imagined my expression must have been terrifying. I didn't give him a hard time and went straight to Chloe's office. I had just sat down when there was a knock on the door. Then, Leo Vance walked in. He was indeed handsome, with sharp, sunny features and a clean aura, giving off an air of being pure and untainted. "Here's your coffee." "Are you a secretary?" I asked. Leo frowned. "I was just helping someone out." "You seem to have a lot of free time." "Mr. Anderson, there's no need to be so aggressive. I was just being helpful." "What a helpful person you are." "An intern from the programming department, being helpful in the executive suite. Are you neglecting your duties? Or is she showing you special favoritism?" "Mr. Anderson," Leo said, placing the coffee down firmly, "I know you have a problem with me." I cut him off. "This is the second time we've met. Why would I have a problem with you? What reason do I have to have a problem with you?" Leo's face was a mask of defiance. "I know you're bothered by my interactions with Ms. Hayes, but we're just friends. As her husband, you shouldn't be trying to take away her right to have friends." I nodded. "A friend who brings her breakfast and lunch, a friend who sits right next to her to eat, a friend who can freely enter her office, a friend who interferes with other departments' work, a friend who wanders around during work hours. What are these all special privileges she's granted you?" Leo was speechless. "We're both men. We both know exactly what these actions of yours imply, don't we?" "Ms. Hayes." Leo spun around, and the moment he saw Chloe, he immediately put on an expression of someone enduring immense pain but trying to act strong. Chloe's face was dark. Leo looked at her with pleading eyes, but she didn't even spare him a glance, walking straight over to me instead. She grabbed my hand. What happened? Only then did I notice the stinging pain in my hand. Looking down, I saw a red splotch where the hot coffee had splashed on me. Seeing Chloe's apparent concern, I felt a wave of weariness. I pulled my hand away from her grasp. "I don't need your help." Chloe's face darkened. "What exactly happened?" Leo looked humiliated. "It's all my fault. I accidentally spilled the coffee just now." Only then did Chloe look at Leo. "That's enough. You can go now." Leo glanced at Chloe one last time before stubbornly turning and leaving. "Kurt, go buy some burn cream. Right away, Ms. Hayes." I let out a soft scoff. Putting on a tragic romance for my benefit? Making me out to be the villain who's tearing two lovers apart. Chloe shot me a glare. "Ethan, what do you want? Are you going to keep making a scene in public?" I looked at her, my face devoid of expression. "What? Does it hurt to see me picking on your little lover? But what can you do? I still hold the title of your husband, and I have every right to deal with homewreckers who get too close. If you really cared about your little lover, you shouldn't have stood me up. I waited for you at the city clerk's office for 2 hours. Where were you? You didn't show, you didn't even call. Is your time the only time that matters? Chloe? Don't we all have important things to do? Chloe's face grew darker and darker. The city clerk's office? What were you doing there? I stared at her in disbelief. What do you do at the city clerk's office? Go sightseeing? Of course it was for the divorce. What did you think we signed that agreement for yesterday? For fun. Chloe stared at me, her breathing becoming more and more rapid. Suddenly, she swayed and started to fall backward. My heart clenched, and I quickly reached out to steady her. Chloe shook her head, looking extremely unwell. What's wrong with you? In response to my question, she pushed me away and gagged twice, unable to control it. It was morning sickness. I clenched my jaw and asked again, what's wrong? Chloe looked up at me, her face pale, but her gaze was freezing cold. You want a divorce, right? Fine, let's get a divorce. I smiled. This was the answer I wanted. Even at this moment, it was what I wanted. But I felt incredibly sad. A wave of overwhelming emotion surged up from the bottom of my heart. My eyes grew hot, and tears began to stream down my face uncontrollably. Chloe froze. Are you crying? I took a sharp breath. You're seeing things. Chloe's lips trembled. Ethan, we need to talk. In our 25 years of life, Chloe and I had never been absent from each other's. But because of our 3-year age gap, it always felt like I was waiting for her. When she was 3, I was 6. Just as she started preschool, I was off to elementary school. When she was 6, I was 9. I had just waited for her to join me in elementary school, but then my classes were moved to the other side of campus. When she was 10, I was 13. Just a year after she moved to my side of campus, I left for middle school. When she started middle school, I went to high school. When she got to high school, I went to college. By the time she finally got into the same university as me, I had already graduated and started my career. So what can I say? 3 years is a real gap. But even so, I was there with her through all 4 years of her college life. It was in college that I confessed my feelings and we got together. Back then, I rented an apartment off campus, and Chloe and I moved in together. I was already very busy with work, and the apartment was far from my office, but despite all that, I always came back to our little home every day. Chloe was there waiting for me. No matter what, I always had to go back. I loved her, and I thought she loved me too. Sitting in a quiet private dining room, Chloe studied the menu carefully while my gaze drifted away, unwilling to land on her. She asked me, "What do you want to eat?" I had no intention of punishing myself, so I ordered a few light dishes and stopped there. Chloe gave me a strange look but didn't say anything. She added 2 more dishes, then handed the menu back to the waiter, signaling for him to leave. As the waiter left, she suddenly got up and sat next to me, catching me off guard by grabbing my hand. I was startled and instinctively tried to pull away, but Chloe held me fast. "Don't move. What are you doing?" Chloe kept her head down, looking at my hand. "Stay still. I'm putting cream on it." Her voice was a little hoarse, and hearing it made my heart ache. I saw her take a tube of ointment from her pocket. "I'll do it myself." I reached for the tube, but Chloe pulled it away. She said, "I'll do it." "No, I can do it myself." Chloe got angry. My hand, hovering in midair, paused and then dropped limply to my side. Forget it. We'd seen every part of each other. What was the point of being difficult now? I turned my head away, not wanting to watch. A moment later, I felt a cool sensation on my hand, followed by the soft touch of Chloe's fingertips. My heart trembled slightly. "Ethan, do you really want a divorce?" At some point, Chloe had moved back to the seat across from me. Hearing her question, I nodded. "Yes." "Just because of those photos?" "Yes." Chloe took a deep breath. She was agitated, trying to suppress her emotions. She said, "Leo and I have never done anything inappropriate. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. What are you so upset about? It's just a normal professional relationship. You've had a job before." It must have been hard for Chloe to repeat such meaningless words to me over and over. "Chloe," I said, looking up at her, "why do you never sit next to me? Why do you always have to sit across from me?" Chloe frowned, looking confused, as if she didn't understand what I meant, or perhaps it was a question she had never considered. I said, "From the time I was 6 until now, 22 years. Let's say 300 days a year, that's 6,600 days. Let's round it down to 6,000. At 1 meal a day, we've eaten at least 6,000 meals together. In all those 6,000 meals, you have never once sat next to me. You always sit across from me. Just like a moment ago, even after you sat beside me to put on the cream, you still went back to sitting across from me. Look, the distance between us is at least 3 feet. But you and him, you can sit right next to each other. What was the distance between you then? 2 inches. Chloe froze, then stood up, looking a little lost. I held up a hand to stop her. Don't come over here. That was just a one-time thing. The only place to eat in the office is that one desk, and there's no way to. I didn't let her finish, cutting her off directly. Do you remember college? We lived in that apartment at the Avalon. Every morning before I went to work, I'd get up to make you breakfast. At first, I didn't know how to cook, so I could only heat up some milk or make plain oatmeal. But you couldn't eat that every day, so I taught myself. When I wasn't busy, I'd experiment with all kinds of breakfast foods at home. Dumplings, wontons, pancakes, omelets. Back then, breakfast was the only meal I could make for you. You were waiting at home, and I was determined to make sure you ate well in the morning. But you never had an appetite in the morning. I could tell it was a struggle for you to eat what I made. So I simplified the complicated breakfasts. The only thing you could finish was a sandwich. 2 triangular pieces of toast, a soft-boiled egg with a sprinkle of pepper, 2 slices of ham, and a piece of lettuce. Most importantly, no sauce of any kind. You probably don't even know these details yourself. I figured them out one breakfast at a time. As for the hand-ground coffee, you don't like milk or juice, you can't stand the texture, but you enjoy coffee with a splash of cream. Do you think I don't know that coffee on an empty stomach is bad for you? But you like it. And have you ever once gotten a stomachache from drinking coffee in the morning? Chloe, what do you think that soup I make you every night is for? It's to protect your stomach. I conditioned your stomach day by day. I built it up so you could drink the coffee you like in the morning, so you wouldn't get a stomachache even if you skipped a meal or 2, not so you could go out and eat someone else's food. Chloe's expression was grim. Her mouth opened and closed, but finally, she just stared at me. She said, "It won't happen again. Never again." I shook my head. There is no again. Chloe, the smile you showed him is a smile you never even gave me when we were taking our wedding photos. During that photo shoot, you had the same expression from start to finish. Later, I overheard the staff talking. They were saying, "Do you think she's being forced into this marriage? Look at her. She hasn't smiled once the entire time. She seems so unhappy." I wasn't unhappy. I was just nervous. There was something in Chloe's eyes I couldn't decipher, something that looked like panic. I shook my head. Impossible. When had Chloe ever panicked? I rubbed my aching temples. Chloe walked over to me, knelt on one knee, and took my hand. She looked at me with an intensity that surpassed even the moment she accepted my proposal. She said, "I will transfer Leo to a branch office, and I will never see him again. Maybe I didn't handle the boundaries with him correctly. But I promise you, I only admire him, his attitude toward life and work. Nothing more." "You had feelings for him." Chloe's brow twitched. I did not. Her tone was decisive, without a hint of hesitation. I shook my head. "You had feelings for him." Chloe's expression grew agitated. "It's my own heart. If I say I didn't, then I didn't." I pulled my hand away. Chloe's face went cold, and she stared at me blankly. "Chloe, I know you too well. For years, men have been flocking around you, trying to get your attention, but you never gave them a second glance. But this time it's different. You've broken so many of your own rules for him. He's the first one in your 25 years of life. In other words, what do you call that? You call that true love. I'm a businessman. If I see an investment that's about to bankrupt me, I will cut my losses immediately to minimize the damage. Chloe, you developed feelings. You developed feelings for someone else. So, I don't want you anymore." Chloe refused my demand for a divorce. This was to be expected. After all, Chloe was neither impulsive nor sentimental. Just like in the book, even at the very end, she wasn't divorced, merely widowed. The thought made me shudder. Chloe wouldn't actually try to kill me, would she? I shook my head. It probably wouldn't come to that. I could understand most of the plot developments in the book, but there was one thing I couldn't accept. Chloe destroying my family's company, Anderson Incorporated. That wasn't something the Chloe I knew would do. If Anderson Incorporated was destined to fall, Chloe would have at most played a supporting role. The deeper reasons must lie within the company itself. It seemed I needed to thoroughly review my company's affairs. After our talk, Chloe seemed lost and dejected. In the end, all she said was, "I won't divorce you. We will be fine together." I felt I had made myself clear enough, and I couldn't be bothered to say more. After all, I wasn't her relationship counselor, and it wasn't my job to help her figure out her own feelings. I stood up and walked out. She grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" I said. "Home." She didn't let go. "Which home?" "To the villa," I replied. Hearing this, she seemed to let out a small sigh of relief. She said, "Wait for me at home. I'll handle everything." I shrugged, paying her no mind. The villa was the house we had lived in since we got married. She thought I was giving in and going home, but I didn't tell her I was only going back to clear out my things. When I returned to the villa with a team of professional movers, Maria was shocked. The scene was so dramatic. At first glance you might think the house was being repossessed. Maria looked completely bewildered. "Sir, what are you doing?" I said, moving out. Before Maria could ask any more questions, I started giving orders. "Take down all the photos and paintings from the walls. Pack up all the men's items in the upstairs walk-in closet. Move the entire bookshelf out of the master bedroom. Get rid of all the rugs. Have the ginkgo tree outside removed. The rest of you, clear out the entire house. Take anything that belongs to a man." I arrived with a large crew and I left with a large crew. Maria tried to approach me several times, but my calm demeanor dissuaded her. She was employed by Chloe and paid by Chloe. Once I left this place, we would have no reason to interact again. As such, there was no need for pleasantries. After leaving the villa, I didn't go to my parents' house but to another property I owned. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson were still away on their trip, and there was no need to worry them. Besides, my mind was made up about the divorce, and I didn't want to hear anyone's advice. After leaving, I blocked Chloe on all platforms and went straight to my office. For the next week, I practically lived at the office, going over every contract and all the financial records. And as luck would have it, I actually found a problem. The company's CFO had set up a shell corporation behind my back to engage in tax evasion. If he had pocketed all the money himself, that would have been one thing, but he had transferred a small portion of it to my father's account under the guise of stock dividends. Quite the operator. Not only was he breaking the law, but he was also trying to set my father up to take the fall. Who gave him the nerve? This CFO was a company veteran, my father's best friend. He had been with my dad through thick and thin for so many years and had always looked out for me. I never would have thought the wolf that would bite your neck was right beside you all along, but I could understand it. After all, if Chloe could change, why couldn't anyone else? Having found the root of the problem, I handed the matter directly over to Mr. Hoffman. What was to be done about it? As a law-abiding citizen, the only course of action was to follow the law. During that busy week, many people tried to contact me. The three most notable were Chloe, Leo, and Felix. I didn't see Chloe. She tried to force her way in, but I called the police. I didn't see Leo either. Did I look like I had time to spare? I had better things to do than chat with a homewrecker. As for Felix, I have to say he was a peculiar character. A truly peculiar man with all the makings of a classic villain sidekick. I don't know what signal I gave him, but he inexplicably started treating me like his handler, sharing every little detail about Leo and Chloe with me. "Mr. Anderson, today Ms. Hayes tried to transfer Leo out of the main office, but he actually went to her office to argue, saying he would quit if she did. And you know what Ms. Hayes said? Make sure you complete the handover process properly. Mr. Anderson, Leo went to the branch office. After all that fuss, he didn't quit. It makes sense, the benefits at Hayes Corp are too good. Who would be willing to leave? Leo brought Ms. Hayes breakfast again today, but she refused it. He said, whether you take it or not is your business, but I have to fulfill my promise. In the end, Ms. Hayes still didn't eat it and threw it in the trash. I have to say that was a great move. His cheap food belongs in the trash. But I think there's something fishy about that. What promise? I need to look into it. I found it. A month ago, Leo had appendicitis, and it was Ms. Hayes who took him to the hospital. I took out my phone and looked at the latest iMessage from Felix. Leo went up to the rooftop again for a chance encounter with Ms. Hayes. That place is supposed to be her private sanctuary. None of us would dare go up there, but he treats it like his own personal backyard. I was speechless and replied, "You have so much free time. Aren't you afraid of getting your pay docked?" Felix got very excited. "Mr. Anderson, you finally replied to me. Don't worry, I have all of Ms. Hayes' movements under control. Do you need more photos?" Me, "Thanks, but no thanks. Chloe and I are already in the process of divorcing. From now on, you don't need to send me anything about her and Leo." Felix, "Mr. Anderson, don't say that. Losing to you, we'd have no complaints. But losing to Leo? That's just too humiliating." I chuckled. "Then you can try to take his place," I suggested. After all, Felix was the scheming type. No, I wouldn't dare. That's Ms. Hayes. She probably doesn't even remember my name." I asked, "You don't think you can compete with Leo?" Felix, "Well, we're just mere mortals and he's like some kind of pure, innocent saint. TSK, I really don't get Ms. Hayes' taste. The more I think about it, the angrier I get." Felix's words successfully amused me. "Are you free tonight? Let me buy you dinner." Felix replied instantly, "I'm free. All my plans will make way for you, Mr. Anderson." I arranged to meet Felix at a restaurant owned by my friend, Rachel. When she saw me, she was surprised. "You came alone? Chloe isn't with you?" I was even more surprised. "When has she ever come with me?" Rachel rubbed her nose and walked away with a sheepish laugh. Chatting with Felix was quite enjoyable. He was the straightforward type, not very clever, and even when he tried to be subtle, you could see right through him. Being with him was relaxing. But life is like a play, full of countless coincidences and surprises. For example, Leo Vance just happened to be working part-time at this very restaurant. When he saw me, his first instinct was to hide. But a second later, he suddenly straightened his spine. Seeing him, Felix rolled his eyes. Well, what kind of inspirational sob story is he trying to sell now? Felix sneered. Leo looked at me with grief and indignation. You'll have to ask Mr. Anderson about that. I feigned confusion. What did I do? I beckoned him over. Come on, tell me. What did I do to you? Leo's eyes were filled with anger and grievance. Mr. Anderson, if my relationship with Ms. Hayes has caused a misunderstanding, I can explain. But taking your anger out on my parents, isn't that going too far? Leo, I'm giving you a chance to speak, so get to the point. Don't play word games with me or try to blame me. You don't have the right. Just as I finished speaking, Chloe rushed in, looking like she had come in a hurry. She was wearing a light gray suit, one that I had bought for her. A miscalculation. I had thought of everything, but I had forgotten about all the things I had bought for her. I should have taken those with me too. I let out a small laugh. Spoke too soon. It seems you do have some standing after all. Your backup has arrived. Leo turned, a look of pleasant surprise on his face as he saw Chloe. But Chloe didn't even spare him a glance. Her eyes were glued to me, not leaving for a second. I looked back at her. She had lost weight, and there was a hint of exhaustion in her features. I said, "Here to back up your little lover? Why bother with this shady business? Wouldn't it be easier to just finalize the divorce with me? What? Are you looking for a thrill?" Chloe seemed not to hear me. She took 2 steps forward, staring at me intently. "Why won't you come home?" My face hardened. I had no desire to continue this pointless conversation. I turned to Leo. "I know you've been trying to find me for the past few days. I'll give you one last chance. If you have something to say it now." Leo looked at Chloe with pleading eyes. When he realized she wasn't going to respond, he turned to me with a look of humiliation. "Mr. Anderson, why did you fire my parents? They worked diligently at Anderson Incorporated for so many years. How could you fire them for your own personal reasons? What did they do wrong? What a coincidence." Leo's parents worked at my company. The plot really knows how to create trouble for the villainous first husband. Leo, have you been watching too many romantic dramas? Do you have any idea how many people work for my company? Over 10,000. Who are your parents that I would personally fire them? And let's say, for the sake of argument, that I did order their dismissal, so what? Why do you think I run such a large company and make so much money? For charity? No, I do it because it makes me happy. As the ultimate decision maker of this company, don't I have the right to fire a few employees of questionable character? Ms. Hayes, do I? I asked, looking coldly at Chloe. Chloe looked back at me. She said, "Come home with me. I got everything back. Everything is just like it was before. Come home with me." I was silent. Leo was not happy. "What right do you have to say my parents have questionable character? Because they raised a son with questionable character like you." Leo's face turned bright red. "Mr. Anderson, you're a bully. Do you think you can just bully people because you're rich and powerful? What did I do? How can you say that about me? I was just grateful that Ms. Hayes took me to the hospital. I bought her breakfast and made her lunch just to show my gratitude." I nodded with great understanding. "I get it." I glanced at Felix, who was thoroughly enjoying the drama, and asked him, "If you had appendicitis, would you call Chloe?" Felix shook his head vigorously. "Do I not have a phone? Can I not call 911? Do I not have parents? They would be the first people I'd call. At the very least, I could crawl out and knock on a neighbor's door." Leo's face went from pale to green, and then Felix added, "Even if I did call Ms. Hayes, the most she would probably do is call 911 for me." That remark was a precision strike, twisting the knife, but it brought a look of joy to Leo's face. Chloe didn't even flinch. She said, "It will never happen again." I was losing interest in this conversation. "Leo, don't lose hope. Once Chloe and I are divorced, you can have your chance. But for now, don't give me a reason to destroy you." Chloe clenched her jaw. She grabbed my hand. "We are not getting a divorce. Not now, not ever. There is no one else, only you." What was the point of saying that now? I tried to pull my hand away, but she wouldn't loosen her grip at all. I didn't mean to throw her off. With just a slight tug, she stumbled and hit the corner of the table. Instantly, her face went white, and she clutched her stomach. She grabbed my arm tightly. "The baby, our baby. Did I want a child?" The answer was yes. Before I had presented the divorce agreement, I had been hoping Chloe would tell me she was pregnant. I thought that if she just told me, I would forgive her. Regardless of whether she liked Leo, regardless of whether she had feelings for him, as long as she wanted to keep our child, we could start over. but she never said a word. Even as we were going through the divorce process, she said nothing. I had assumed she had already terminated the pregnancy. But now she was telling me she was carrying our child. Chloe lay in the hospital bed, her hand gripping mine tightly. I didn't pull away. To be honest, I was tired. I was exhausted mentally and physically. The doctor said, "You're showing signs of a threatened miscarriage, but your overall health is good, so it's not critical. We'll keep you in the hospital for a few days for observation and IV therapy. Afterwards, you need to rest, keep your stress levels low, and avoid any further impacts." I nodded. "Thank you, doctor." After the doctor left, a nurse came in to start her 4. The drip was slow, and neither of us spoke. After a long while, Chloe said, "I'm pregnant," and my voice was hoarse and sounded awful. Chloe's hand trembled in mine, and she quickly let go. "What did you say?" I looked down at her, and Chloe's eyes instantly turned red. "I'm pregnant with our child, and you're asking me, and even though I'm pregnant, you still want to divorce me?" I felt short of breath. "Our child? Weren't you planning on not keeping it? Where is this our child coming from?" Chloe shook her head. "That's not." I cut her off. "When did you find out you were pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? If you don't want a divorce, if you think being pregnant could change things, then why didn't you say anything?" Chloe's lips pressed into a thin line, her hand on the bed clenching into a tight fist. I gave a sarcastic laugh. "Can't answer? Then I'll answer for you. Because you never intended to keep it. Since that's the case, why are you using it as a bargaining chip now?" A long silence followed. When Chloe spoke again, her voice was choked with sobs. "Ethan, let's not get a divorce, okay?" I shook my head decisively. "No." Chloe's breathing grew heavy. "I'll have the baby. We won't get a divorce." "Chloe," I growled, "stop using the baby as a bargaining chip." Chloe started to cry. "It was my fault. I didn't handle my relationship with Leo properly. It won't happen again. Can we start over, please?" My heart ached. I sighed. "Someone else might be able to, but you can't. Because you're Chloe Hayes." Chloe looked at me, bewildered. "In all these years, the only man you've ever personally acknowledged as a friend is Leo, right? Not even the guys we grew up with got that honor. Right now, you're just friends. But what about later? Chloe, ask yourself honestly, if I hadn't escalated this to a divorce, if I had just argued with you, made a scene, or even threatened you, what would you have done? You would have found me annoying, called me petty, accused me of being unreasonable. You would have told me again and again, we're just friends. You know what? I hate it when people use the just friends excuse to engage in ambiguous behavior and then blame me for it. Or worse, if something did happen, they'd say I pushed them to it. Why go through all that? Isn't it better to cut it off at the source? Like cutting out a piece of rotten flesh. Chloe shook her head, slowly. She looked at me with pleading eyes. Ethan, you can't do this. You can't leave me over things that haven't happened. These are just your assumptions. They won't happen. They can't happen. I rubbed my temples. Have you ever heard of risk assessment? Chloe froze. What about our relationship? Our 25 years together, are you just going to throw it all away so easily? We have a child now, we can get better. You still love me. It seemed that love, the love I had given her, was the last bit of confidence she was clinging to. I cut her off. Chloe, do you love me? Chloe looked at me. For the first time, she answered this question directly. Ethan, I love you. I scoffed. If you can do things that are so ambiguous and cross so many lines while loving me, then what's wrong with me wanting a divorce while loving you? Chloe's face went pale. She looked at me with the desperate eyes of a drowning person. I turned my head away, unable to look at her any longer. I'll give you a week to think about it. What about our child? That's up to you. If you want to have it, I'll support it. If you don't, I can go with you to the procedure. My words were cold and cruel, hurting her as much as they hurt me. I heard a muffled thud from behind me, followed by Chloe's roar, like that of a caged animal. Ethan, Chloe stayed in the hospital for a week, and she caused a scene for a week. She refused to eat properly, refused treatment unless I was there. The nurses and doctors called me constantly. Thankfully, her parents didn't know, or they would have come storming over. But on this matter, I wasn't entirely heartless. I went when I had to, brought the food she needed, but I didn't say anything more than necessary. Gradually, Chloe fell silent too. One day, she suddenly spoke. Ethan, I'm scared. When you're like this, I feel you slipping further and further away from me. I didn't know what to say. I'm not a robot. Facing her, I felt sad. I felt hurt. But every pang of sadness and hurt was a reminder that this was all her doing, that she was the one who first threw away our 25 years together. I replayed the whole process in my mind again and again. Felt like 1,000 arrows piercing my heart. And the baby, what are your plans for it? Chloe caressed her stomach. What if I say I want to have it? I'll pay child support, and I'll help take care of it. Chloe looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. During the pregnancy and even while I'm nursing, as long as I don't agree, you can't divorce me. But the child will be born and it will grow up. Chloe, just let it go. Why force this? What if I insist on forcing it? This version of Chloe saddened me. I gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead. Then we might not be able to part on good terms. Chloe choked out a sob. Ethan, you're so cruel. For 25 years, you gave me a sense of security. You made me believe that anyone in the world could leave me, but not you. But now you're abandoning me without a second thought, with no room for compromise. You're too cruel. Her sobs made my heart clench painfully, but only for a moment. Then let's just say I was wrong. Chloe shook her head. It's all my fault. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes. Ethan, if you could do it all over again, would you still be with me? That question made me pause. Looking back, for those 22 years I had been with her, and she had been with me. Chloe stared at me, dazed. I said, Chloe, I'm 28 years old. You have been a constant in my entire life. You were always there for me, the first person by my side no matter what happened. You didn't miss a single stage of my life. You witnessed everything. Chloe, falling in love with you was the most natural thing in the world. I can't deny the past 22 years because of this current mistake. But by the same token, I can't accept this current mistake because of the past 22 years. So what do we do, Chloe? You tell me, what do we do? Tears slid silently from my eyes. Chloe stared at me, stunned. She let out a pained, sorrowful cry. For the first time, she truly understood what she had done wrong. In a hoarse voice, she said, Ethan, I agree to the divorce. Because there were no property disputes, my divorce from Chloe went smoothly. Looking at the newly issued divorce decree, I let out a long sigh. I felt a sense of loss, but also a profound sense of relief. Did I hate Chloe? It didn't feel like it had reached that level. But as long as she held the title of my wife, the things she did were like a fishbone stuck in my throat. Only by shedding that title could I truly let go. What do you call that? Let's call it self-preservation for now. I drove Chloe home. I stopped at her door. This is as far as I go. Chloe looked haggard. She asked, Ethan, will you still come to see me in the future? I suppose so. After all, there's the baby. Chloe had ultimately decided to have the child. I didn't think it was a wise decision, but the baby was in her womb, and I couldn't take that right away from her. I turned and left, leaving Chloe standing there. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson were back from their trip. When my mother saw me, she was overjoyed. Honey, have you lost weight? A little. My father came down the stairs. Where's Chloe? Why didn't she come back with you? We're divorced. I had no intention of hiding it from them. Both my parents were stunned. They stood there, staring at each other in shock. I handed them the divorce decree. This? My father glared at me. What is wrong with you? Something this big, and you didn't even think to discuss it with us? Do you even see us as your parents? My mother slapped his arm. Why are you yelling at him? You know how crazy he is about Chloe. If it wasn't absolutely necessary. She didn't finish her sentence. I lowered my eyes and gave a bitter smile. Everyone knew I was hopelessly in love with Chloe. My mother suddenly stepped forward, stood on her toes to wrap her arms around me, and gently stroked my hair. It's okay. You're home now. Smelling my mother's familiar fruity scent, my nose tingled, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. My heart was filled with grievance. I thought, just let me be a child one more time. One last time. By tomorrow, I would be back to being the suave, capable Mr. Anderson. Epilogue, Chloe. For as long as Chloe could remember, there had always been an older boy by her side who could do anything. His name was Ethan, and he was incredibly handsome. He used to say, Chloe is the most beautiful girl in the world. She's so well-behaved and cute. I like Chloe the most. But Chloe knew that, in reality, she was quite bossy and held grudges. When Ethan was 8, he got into Legos. He could sit there quietly and build for an entire day. It wasn't that Chloe disliked them. It was just that she was only 5 at the time and didn't know how to build. But Ethan didn't mind. While he built with his Legos, he would give Chloe a storybook and let her lie beside him and read. Often, she would end up falling asleep. When that happened, Ethan would stop what he was doing and cover her with a blanket. One day, a girl came to visit with her mother. Seeing the Legos, she wanted to play too. Chloe was unhappy about it, but to her surprise, Ethan agreed and was about to play with the other girl. Chloe got angry and stormed off. Ethan chased after her. Chloe, what's wrong? Chloe pouted, her face a mask of displeasure. She said, I don't want you to play with anyone else. Ethan agreed without a second thought. I won't play with anyone else, only with you, Chloe. So you can't play with anyone else either, okay? Chloe remembered nodding and making a pinky promise with Ethan. They had promised to be exclusive to each other when they were very young. Ethan kept his promise, but Chloe forgot. How could she have forgotten? Her friend had said, "You're just used to having Ethan around. You'll get over it in a while. Besides, you don't love him anyway." Chloe thought that was the most absurd thing she had ever heard. She slammed the glass in her hand onto the floor and roared, "I love him." She loved Ethan. But why did even her best friend think she didn't love him? Ethan had always been the center of attention since they were kids. No matter where he went, he always drew everyone's eyes. She didn't like the way other people looked at him. As if to declare her ownership, she would toss her school bag to him to carry. But even so, she couldn't be by his side all the time. Back then, Chloe was a freshman in high school, and Ethan was already in college. Although they were in the same city, the distance between them felt like it was growing. One day, she saw a photo in a group chat, a path of flower petals, flickering candles, and a shy girl blocking Ethan's way. That was the first time Chloe had ever felt panic. She rushed out of her classroom and headed straight there. It was the first time she had ever skipped class. But standing outside Ethan's university, she didn't know what to do. Her mother once sighed, "You have to speak up, even with the people closest to you. If you don't say what you're thinking, they'll never know." When Ethan was heading back to his dorm after class, he saw her. He joyfully pulled her into a hug. The warmth of his embrace made Chloe's face flush and her heart race. She hastily pushed him away. She snapped at him, embarrassed and annoyed. "What are you doing?" Ethan didn't seem to mind at all. He just grinned at her. He asked her directly, "Did you come here because you saw the photo? Are you jealous?" Before Chloe could answer, Ethan continued, "Don't worry, I'm not going to be with anyone else. I already turned her down. After all, I'm the guy who's going to be Chloe Hayes' boyfriend." Hearing that, Chloe's heart settled. That was the kind of person Ethan was. He could give her all the security she ever wanted. Chloe couldn't resist calling Ethan. She brought up that incident, wanting to tell him that she had loved him ever since that day. Ethan was silent on the other end. After a moment, he said, "Do you remember what you said to me back then?" How could Chloe forget? After hearing what Ethan said, she had replied, "What photo? I don't know what you're talking about. I was just here with a friend to buy something and happened to be passing by." Chloe's hand holding the phone tightened. "That's not it. I was just too embarrassed to tell you." Ethan cut her off. He said, "Chloe, did you really think you saw that photo by accident? Without my okay? Who would have sent that picture to a group chat you were in? I was in college then, and you were getting further and further away from me. I was scared. I was scared you'd fall for someone else. Scared you wouldn't wait for me. I desperately needed to prove to myself that you loved me. So, even knowing someone was going to confess to me, I went. After that photo was sent, I just waited, from the afternoon until the evening. I was so happy when you showed up. In that moment, I felt like I had the whole world." Ethan's words felt like a knife twisting in Chloe's heart. He continued, "I asked you if you were jealous, but I didn't give you a chance to answer. Do you know why? Because I was afraid your answer wouldn't be the one I wanted. I was afraid you would disappoint me. I was deceiving myself, telling myself that as long as you showed up, it was enough. As long as you came, it meant you cared. Chloe, we can stay in touch. We can talk about work, about life, about the baby. But let's not talk about love anymore, okay? You say you love me, but I've spent all these years just trying to prove that to myself. Chloe, I'm tired." Epilogue, Chloe. Chloe hadn't been sleeping well lately. As her belly grew, her nerves became more and more frayed. Everyone was advising her to terminate the pregnancy, but Chloe refused. She was afraid that if she lost this baby, she and Ethan would have no connection left at all. It was just like the villa. Without Ethan, the house was suffocating. It had once been just a cold building, but Ethan had filled it, bit by bit, with life and warmth. The rugs on the floor, the paintings on the walls, the vase on the table, the magnets on the fridge, the pillows on the sofa, the decorations on the shelves, and the ginkgo tree outside. All the details she had once overlooked now felt like steel nails being driven into her heart. It was a raw, constant pain. Standing on her balcony, she could just see Ethan's family home from her current position. Although she couldn't see him, it felt like only under this patch of sky could she finally breathe. During those sleepless nights, she asked herself countless times, how did she let things between her and Ethan get to this point? They used to be so harmonious, so perfect together. Chloe squinted slightly, her mind drifting back to college, to the day Ethan confessed his feelings to her. It was an ordinary day. Ethan was playing basketball with his friends at the gym, and he insisted that Chloe come and watch. Chloe sat in the stands, surrounded by many other girls. But every time Ethan turned his head, his eyes would instantly find hers. His gaze was intense, a smile on his face. After the game, he went to the locker room to change. Chloe had intended to follow him just to tell him she was leaving early. But Ethan suddenly threw his jacket over her head and pulled her inside with him. Chloe poked her head out from under the jacket. Ethan's large jacket was draped loosely over her shoulders, covering her all the way down to her legs. He looked down at her, his eyes sparkling like they were full of stars. He said, "Hey girl, want to be in a relationship? The kind that leads to marriage." Who could possibly say no to those bright, shining eyes? She said, "Okay." She thought she would be protected by those eyes forever, but in the end, she was the one who caused them to lose their light. Those 4 years of college were the best 4 years of her life. She and Ethan lived together in a small but warm apartment. Every morning, Ethan would prepare breakfast for her and give her a good morning kiss. He would smile and say, "Girlfriend, you just wait at home while I go out and make money to support you." And every night when he came back, no matter how late, Chloe would be waiting for him on the sofa. He would always hug her, nuzzle his scruffy head against her shoulder, and say, "Girlfriend, you've worked hard." What Ethan gave Chloe was always an abundance of love. But what did Chloe give Ethan in return? Neglect, coldness, and a lack of response. Maybe it was because Ethan was too good to her. Since they were children, she never had to ask for anything. Ethan would take care of it all. He would remind her to study hard, urge her to sleep early, and protect her from any harm. One time, Ethan grumbled, "I didn't get a girlfriend. I got myself a little queen to worship." And what did she do back then? She would get angry, become sullen, and reply with cold words. "If you don't want to do it, then don't. It's not like I asked you to." And every time, Ethan would immediately back down and apologize. "How could I not want to? Of course I want to, more than anything." Chloe's heart trembled. She realized she had never shown Ethan even a shred of warmth. She deserved for Ethan to leave her. Just as he had said, she had hardly ever truly smiled at him. So what had he been hoping for all these years? Epilogue, Chloe. Chloe thought back to her wedding with Ethan. On that day, she had actually been very nervous. More nervous than she was for her first major business negotiation. Because she was so nervous, her face was tense the entire time. She had heard what people were saying. They suspected that she, the bride, was being forced into the marriage. Chloe had scoffed at the idea, thinking those people were crazy. If she, Chloe Hayes, didn't want to get married, who could possibly force her? She had assumed Ethan would be just as certain as she was, but she never imagined those words would actually hurt him. If she could turn back time, she would have rushed into his dressing room and thrown herself into his arms. She would have told everyone that this was the man she loved to the bone. But there are no do-overs in this world. What's missed is missed. Ethan had given her unwavering certainty, and in return, she had given him doubt and suspicion. She deserved it. She hadn't realized how differently she treated Leo, and in doing so, she had hurt Ethan. She admitted it. She was wrong, but she would not admit that she liked Leo. What was undeniable, however, was that she had allowed someone else to distract her from her own marriage. After Leo was let go, he came to find her. He confronted her. "Why are you doing this to me? It's obvious you have feelings for me." Chloe asked him back, "You think I have feelings for you?" Leo nodded with certainty. "I can feel it. You're different with me. I know you must like me. Let's be together, okay? You're divorced now. There are no more obstacles between us. We can finally be together." Chloe's heart ached, a dense, sharp pain. The man who had doted on her, who had loved her for more than 20 years, was never sure if she loved him back. Yet this person, who had been in her life for less than half a year, dared to say such things with confidence. What had she done? To what extent had she truly hurt Ethan? "Leo, I do not like you. Not now and not ever. If I did something to give you that impression, I apologize. But if you ever appear in front of me and Ethan again, I will not be so polite." Chloe's tone was ice cold as she turned and walked away. Behind her, Leo's face was pale, and he looked as if he might collapse. He said spitefully, "Chloe, do you think you're so noble? Do you think you've done nothing wrong? If you didn't like me, you shouldn't have sent signals that you were approachable. You're the one who let me get close, and now you're saying it was all in my head. What right do you have? Now you just walk away and pretend you did nothing." Chloe felt utterly exhausted, more lost than she had ever been in her life. So this was all she was, Chloe Hayes. And this was all her self-assured feelings amounted to. The divorce eventually became known to both sets of parents. She was summoned home. Her father just shook his head at her in disappointment. She had been her parents' pride her entire life. Seeing that look on her father's face for the first time, Chloe felt like she was suffocating. The baby, in the end, Chloe couldn't save it. She cried for a long, long time. Ethan came to see her. Chloe hid under the covers, too afraid to face him. She hadn't been able to protect their child. There was no future for her and Ethan anymore. It wasn't that she didn't want the baby. She just felt she was still young and didn't want to have children so soon. She had been too spoiled by Ethan. Arrogant from being so doted on, she thought that even if she didn't want the child, she didn't need to consult Ethan, that he would unconditionally go along with her wishes. But she was wrong. Her mother had once told her, if you like someone, you have to tell them. Love needs to be spoken. No one can give forever without expecting something in return. Don't wait until the love is all used up to feel regret. Chloe had been so sure that Ethan's love for her was the exception. Now she regretted it. Her mother said, don't be like this anymore. Chloe cried and laughed, then laughed and cried. What future was there left? She had been loved so sincerely by Ethan. How could she ever fall in love with anyone else?